it's something that I'm extremely passionate about, and it's something that the company that I work for shares the same values that I do, which is fantastic. But we've had a lot of discussion more in the last sort of year about how important diversity is and how you need to build an inclusive environment to compete in the marketplace. Our customer base is changing massively, and in order to compete and face off to those customers, we need to have the same inclusive environment. And we don't have that level of diversity yet. Yeah, and I'd say that, you know, we're on a bit of a journey, but I think it's fair to say at the moment we don't represent our client base. And I think if you look forward sort of 2 to 3, 4 years out, it's going to be even more different. So if we don't keep up and we don't change our workforce, you know, that's going to be a real challenge to compete. And also, there'll be more roles than there will be people by 2020 in technology. So we have to broaden where we look to recruit people. Otherwise, we're not going to get the talented workforce that we need, and we won't be able to compete from that perspective as well.
Being innovative is essential for Accenture because we work with our clients to solve their most challenging problems. So you can't do that if everybody looks and thinks the same. You're not going to get the most innovative result.
One of the challenges that folks in the disability community face, and I actually like to say it's people of different abilities, so that we focus on what people can do as opposed to focusing on what they can't do, which is that people are very blatant about their biases, about what blind people can or cannot do, or what types of things people with physical or other disabilities can or cannot do. And really, they bring another perspective, another point of view, and we need to think about that. And we need to think about that in terms of if we are working with a vendor and they bring in a new platform that we're going to use for our employees, do they have an accessible site? Have we thought about those things? Have we thought about that in our RFPs? And I know at Google we started to do some of that work, not because we were forward-thinking, but because we made some really bad mistakes. Mm-hmm. And I think for some organizations, if you don't get ahead of it, that's what happens. You make mistakes.
It's different. So we run lots of initiatives now where we're trying to look at, we have a women's network, which is now a Fidelity for everyone, which is building this inclusive environment. We look at things like our job descriptions, and we try to make them less sort of blokish, mannish, technology related, you know, to try to use different words and that would appeal to a broader range of people. And then we have a reverse mentoring program, so the millennials now have a chance to reverse mentor the more senior managers as well. And I have to say, I've noticed in the last 12 to 6 months that the millennials are really, really challenging the senior people. And it's great to see that they have no problems whatsoever with speaking up. And that's fantastic. That's really changing our environment and our culture, which is great to see.
We're actively reconnecting with women who have left Accenture and asking them if they're interested in coming back. And so we're allowing them to bypass all the interviewing processes, since they had already been our employees. And then we're giving them 6 weeks of intensive training to brush up their skills. And then, you know, they're back in business, you know. And it's been incredibly successful because there are times when you know, the times have changed, and they've also changed at Accenture. So people see a place for themselves where perhaps they might not have seen it, you know, 5, 10 years ago, but today they can see how they can be successful both professionally and personally.
We do a hire a hero, and we're also doing women returners as well. And I think if it's hard for women to return to work, it's probably even harder in technology because it's such a male-orientated environment. So part of that is to make it as easy as possible around the sort of the onboarding process. But actually try not to make them go through that whole prove it again process, because actually, you know, they've left, it's not like they've forgotten everything when they come back. So it's that inclusive environment, and we offer sort of the training and the onboarding, and then also the sponsorship, so as well as mentorship, just making sure that they're sponsored and they've got people looking out for them, and then get them indoctrinated into our network as well. Our Fidelity for Everyone network is really key.
One thing that actually is working in our tech workforce that I'd like to share, because I think it's a practice that can be used very broadly, is we noticed that our women were gravitating toward project management roles. And project management roles are important, but they're not in short supply. And so what we did was we defined a certified technical architect career path for women And certified technical architects in the digital age are very high, short supply, high demand skill. And so these women come in and they achieve this special technical architect certification, and they can write their own ticket. They can work flexibly, they're in very high demand, and therefore can also advance. And it's a great opportunity for technology people to get that focus and certification.
I guess it's so different today to what it probably was for me. So if I look back, 10, 15 years ago, then my work life and my home life were two totally different things. And you'll often hear people talk about the fact that, they come to work and they start telling about what they did the weekend, and they have to manage the pronouns and everything that happens. Well, that was really, really real, because I felt that I only brought half of myself to work, and everything that was happening to me, they were so separate. And I guess the big difference today is that I go to work, everybody knows everything that's happening, and it's just, and it's a freedom. And so it's like being liberated in a way, and I just feel on the same level playing field then as everybody else, I guess. Yeah, well, I guess I suppose I'm very lucky, and everybody will, I think, certainly a lot of people here are very enlightened and work for enlightened organizations. I'm very lucky. I work for an organization and we employ just about 420,000 people globally. So this is a really important, pertinent point for us. And I guess, going back to the question, we really try very hard to try and understand what are all the different challenges, and there are many. So we've like 7 different strands at the moment of diversity and inclusion that we're looking at, and how do we continue to build on those. But I think the most important thing is the organization's really open. So when we're thinking this morning about some of the challenges, I'm working for an organization that doesn't have a closed mind about it, and allows me, for instance, in this jurisdiction, to kind of go out and see what's happening and bring it into the workplace and make it real. Oh, I think absolutely, yeah, most definitely. I think, going into work on the Monday morning after the Friday and the Saturday, it felt like stepping on a new planet. Everything was radically different. For the first time ever, we felt really, really, I think, ourselves. But I found that the whole workplace, I think, opened up, because I think organizations that were perhaps a little reluctant here about embracing LGBT, who were perhaps maybe a little nervous about what steps they should take, they suddenly felt free to also start to be inclusive around this. So that started changing, and then those who were already well down the path had sort of gone to a new level as well.
There are parts of our country where people in the LGBT community can lose their jobs. People can be fired just for being gay. And so we have to keep going. And I think we've seen companies who are very vocal about that. And I think that it's gotten to the point where it's noticed if you're not.
What I would say, we always hear this expression, don't sweat the small stuff. But I really believe that we have to sweat the small stuff. And not the minutia and the bureaucracy, but each individual. And so I think that if I could ask you to do anything when you go back to your organization and try to help move the needle on all of the issues related to inclusion and diversity, I would ask you to make sure that you're using your voice, but you're also listening to every single other person's, because once the voices start amplifying, that's when the change starts to happen.
Your leadership behavior is incredibly important. So I think everybody goes back to the workplace. It's about, think about things you do, what it says about you, and how a very positive behavior that might, for instance, change something for somebody else could make a big difference.
And I think all of us can be allies to people who are different from us. I think it's not enough to speak up about the issues that are relevant to you, but to look at your colleagues and speak up for other issues. Because sometimes it gets exhausting to be the only one of whatever, and to always have to say, hey, this isn't fair to people like me. Be another voice, add your voice to someone else and say, yeah, I see that too. Don't just focus in an insular way.
So I think, I'd encourage people to speak up. I think sometimes there's a bit of a fear to talk about diversity and inclusion. I think the more we talk about it, the easier it becomes to talk about it. then the better the understanding is and the awareness and the unbiased or the conscious bias that Judith was talking about becomes better understood and better known, then I think that's going to definitely create a more inclusive culture and workforce, and then the diversity will come off the back of it.
Enjoy this video from Inspirefest, then click on the link to get your hands on ultra early bird tickets for Inspirefest 2017 and make sure you're in the audience for this exciting international event.